We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And our topic today is why oil prices are not spiking, even with the war. And with us is the famous Tom Kirkman. So it's a project manager, international project manager for gas, for several different energy source. And I will not talk about this. But these numbers, please, Tom Kirkman, explain to us and welcome.
Yeah, nice to be on your podcast again. I think this is the sixth time. I'm not sure. So these numbers, in the last 365 days, I've had 9 million views by 2,200,000 people. I gave up trying to break 10 million because a few months ago I got into a big battle with LinkedIn and they actually chopped a lot of my numbers retroactively. It's just bizarre. I've been having back and forth censorship battles with LinkedIn, and you're laughing. You know what I'm talking about. But that's not what this discussion is about. So anyway, I'm very prolific on LinkedIn, and I love talking about all sorts of things there, including international oil and gas and energy.
Yeah, fantastic. Tom, let me start showing the number of today, not today, the morning, because now we do not know the number of price of oil at this time, so it's fluctuating a lot. And 64 WTI, and some shake blast shakes Tehran, and Trump saying some mistakes. I cannot understand exactly. But let me ask you something very directly. Oil prices are not going high
Of
values
course.
at this time. Why?
Oh, why would they? Uh, the fundamentals of oil, international oil, have really not changed despite all the bombs. One, neither Israel nor Iran targeted oil infrastructure in a serious basis. Israel, if they really wanted to hurt Iran and utterly destroy them and cause havoc all over the place, they would bomb Karg Island, which is their main export terminal for oil. They did not do that. So the bombs are at military and other infrastructure targets, but not energy. Iran repeatedly over the decades have threatened to close down the Strait of Hormuz and, cause total havoc all over the world, but they've never really pulled the trigger on that. Not really. They've not shut it down. So nothing has really changed. There's all sorts of bombings going on, have been in the Middle East, which is nothing new. It's like, okay, the oil markets know this. So, okay, people are bombing each other again in the Middle East, but it's not affecting energy production. Actually, in the US, you look at it also in the United States, drilling is actually declining because the prices of oil is actually a little bit too low. $64 for West Texas Intermediate WTI is actually too low. I would prefer to see it around 70, 75, and I've said this for probably 15 years. Too much higher and too much lower is going to cause problems around the world because oil companies need money in order to reinvest into new exploration and production, which is very expensive. So my Goldilocks price, which I've stated for over a decade, is $70 to $75 for oil per barrel. So right now it's at 64. So in the US, no matter what, in Texas and other places, they're talking the talk of PR, but they're not actually drilling more, they're drilling less because they need prices to go up. So oil is kind of bearish right now, and ignore all of the politics with bombs flying. The bombs are not targeting significant oil infrastructure. So therefore, savvy market traders are not freaking out. Now, if the Strait of Hormuz really does get closed, or if bombs do get dropped on significant oil infrastructure, then that changes everything. Then the world's going to go crazy on oil prices, and you'll see $200 barrel oil easy. That's my opinion.
But Tom,
does that answer your question?
Yeah. U.S. production is very high at this time, 14 million barrels a day or something like that. So the dependence on other countries' importations is low. It's not high. This is a point that can influence this situation.
Yes, and also another reason why I seriously doubt that Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz is only about somewhere between 2 to 5% of American oil imports go through the Strait of Hormuz, whereas China, which is a strong ally of Iran, gets around 50%. And people say, oh, but they built a railway system from Iran to China. Yeah, well, that's not going to transport nearly as much oil as, large tanker ships. Uh, Transporting by oil by rail is one way of doing it, but it's not as nearly as efficient as either pipelines
Yeah.
or large tanker ships for going from Iran to China. So the backlash against Iran, if they seriously close the Strait of Hormuz, would be worldwide, including their allies, what's left of their allies in the Middle East. So I mean, you see Qatar was cooperating with both the US and Israel to let the US take out the nuclear sites in Iran. And again, the US was not targeting the oil and gas infrastructure or anything like
Yeah,
that. They
that's
weren't
right.
even targeting military bases. They were targeting the nuclear enrichment sites. So
Nuclear
it's very
site.
specific and it's done. And now hopefully the peace will hold. And as long as the peace holds, cross your fingers, oil
Yeah.
prices are probably going to stay around the same area. And if nothing else, will probably go down. Natural gas will probably rise just because of the heat spikes that's going on in the US and in Europe and other stuff. And that's not climate panic. That's just, it's summer. But natural gas is separate completely from oil. So oil prices internationally don't justify skyrocketing just because there's more fighting in the Middle East. There always has been, always will be.
But Tom, it seems that there is an excess of production, too much,
Yes, this is
more
what I said.
production than consumption. Yeah, yeah.
Th-
This is a good
I
point.
don't expect oil prices to rise. I expect them to stay depressed. I don't want to say, a bear market, but it's like there's no reason for it to spike. A lot of the electricity generation is still being done by coal and by natural gas. In the US, it's mostly by natural gas. But that's not oil. The only place I know of in the world that burns oil to generate electricity is Saudi Arabia, just
Exactly.
because
Yeah,
they got
yeah.
so much of it.
It's not common.
But even they're stopping to do it.
Yeah, yeah. But there is another factor, important factor. Internally, OPEC is fighting, is in conflict. They do not understand themselves. OPEC.
What else is new?
But
I,
so they cannot agree to reduce the production to put the price over.
because there's long-standing cheating within the quota system in OPEC, because pretty much everyone in the OPEC system seriously wants to sell more oil than they're supposed to in order to generate more revenue for their own country and screw the rest of the world and screw the rest of OPEC. They don't say that, but that's actually what it is, every man for himself. And sometimes Saudi Arabia and Russia, which is not really OPEC, but they're the two key players right now in OPEC are still Saudi Arabia and Russia. And they're trying to hold the line because they are smart enough to realize the longer term way to increase oil prices to something sustainable to, again, my view is $70 to $75 a barrel, is to reduce production. It's not that difficult. So the thing is, the wild card player, which is totally out of their control, is the United States. But even then, they've got their own constraints, because if the price of oil within the United States drops too low, then drilling stops. So unlike the US, unlike other oil producing countries, is not controlled by the national government. So oil in the United States, the drilling and all that stuff is basically owned by independent companies, and there's a lot of independent wildcat operators, especially in the Permian for fracking and all this other stuff. And the government really has no control over them, except massive amounts of licensing and permitting and all this other crap. So I will put in a a blurb, I think it's really stupid for Trump to say drill, baby, drill, when that's not the problem. The problem is permitting. Get rid of the permitting red tape, which is strangling all sorts of stuff, and the markets will find their way, and the companies will do more drilling if it's going to be profitable. But the thing is, what's holding things up is not the lack of drilling by the drillers. What's holding things up is the permitting
Also,
and
permit,
rules and
baby,
restrictions,
permit.
and EPA, which is totally Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, which is totally out of control. So rein in that, cut the red tape, rein in the EPA back to something that's reasonable, and the cost for drilling and producing and refining oil and gas in the United States will reduce, and you'll get increased production, which is bad for OPEC. See, OPEC probably wants more
Yeah.
red tape and more EPA in the United States to, sort
And
of
the
take
and the
the United States out
participation,
of the picture.
and Tony, participation of OPEC in the total amount of production is reducing a lot. So was 30 something, now is less than 30% of the total
OPEC
oil
doesn't have the
production.
might that it used to have back in the 70s and 80s. Now, their clout is shrinking, and it's not helping all of the infighting that OPEC has been doing. They're constantly, they try to put on a group appearance, but they're constantly infighting. They're constantly cheating on their quotas and trying to beat the game. And it's like, well, it's self-defeating. So OPEC is a whole bunch of nations that really don't like each other, trying to work together to drive up the price of oil for the good of their own
That's right.
countries, while they're gritting their teeth and working with countries they really don't like. That's not really a long-term winning solution.
Any specific influence from the fights between U.S. and Canada? Because Canada stops sending oil to United States or not?
Canada has become a train wreck due to the government and their totally crazy energy policies. It basically Trudeau hammered it into the ground, and the current government, federal government of Canada, is insistent on totally killing off domestic Canadian oil and gas production. No matter what they say, it's the actions that count. And you've got the globalist agenda of keeping oil in the ground and everything wind and solar, and China's so happy about this because they sell everyone all this crap. And what Canada has done is essentially trying to force domestic Canadian oil and gas production into socialism. And socialism does not work, ever. It just kills production. It kills the incentive for making production. So I don't see much hope for Canada's energy in the near future unless the current federal government gets its act together, which I don't see happening.
It's interesting because tariffs that United States is imposing tariffs for everywhere. So
Yep.
This solution is not affecting oil prices. Why?
The tariffs are correcting a 50-year problem of imbalance. So what the US federal government, in other words, Trump, is trying to do is fix this lopsided trade agreements worldwide with all of these countries that have been, in my view, unfairly and lopsided having trade agreements with the US. So that has nothing to do with oil production. Again, oil prices are going to be driven primarily by production and demand. So that's outside of tariffs. Really, it is. So if there's tariffs there, the tariffs, in my view, are currently being designed to rectify long-standing imbalances. And when you fix incorrect trade balances, prices level out to where they're supposed to be. So again, in my view, and this is just my view, oil prices globally should be around $70 to $75 a barrel. That's where I would like it to see, because that's sufficient enough for most oil companies to make sufficient profit that they can reinvest profits into new exploration and production. Saudi Arabia still needs oil above $80, $85 a barrel. That's their problem. because of they've got what, 15,000 Saudi princesses. That's their problem.
Now,
But I'm
you see
talking
that
most of the Western world outside of OPEC, $70 to $75 a barrel is sufficient for oil companies, Shell, ExxonMobil, stuff like that, for them to reinvest properly into new exploration and production. So the tariffs should not really affect oil prices. I don't care what the politicians or the media say. It still comes down to exploration and production and global demand. Again, just my opinion.
is there enough motivation to reinvest in oil exploration in the United States at this time? Or
Again, we're on the right track. The Trump administration is attempting to rein it a bit of the EPA overreach, which has just gotten so excessive in the last many years. It's just ridiculous. And the excessive overregulation of environmental regulations, if they can rein that in, then oil companies, especially independent oil companies, would be more willing to invest in new drilling. That's the problem right there. In the United States, is a little bit peculiar in that it's the overregulation that's causing a lot of the problems. The oil prices are sort of secondary. Again, the overregulation has been going on for so long, people just take it for granted, but it drives up the cost of everything related to extracting and processing and selling energy in the United States, whether it's domestic or shipping it overseas. So you've got LNG terminals that have been blocked because of environmental regulations. That's stupid. Same thing with Canada. It's stupid. So put it down to reasonable levels. Both Canada and the US have the most stringent environmental regulations pretty much in the world as far as producing and extracting and refining and shipping out oil and gas and LNG and coal for that matter in the world. And it's just gone way too far, and the EPA is essentially unaccountable. They need to be reined in. And one of the comments today I did on LinkedIn talking about the EPA is an out-of-control dragon breathing fire, causing chaos and havoc everywhere it goes, and it either needs to be tamed or slain. So I would prefer EPA to just be slain and start up with a new agency that's actually going to be responsible, rather than having as its underlying motive shutting down all oil and gas production in the United States, which is essentially what the EPA has become in the United States. Similarly, that attitude has taken hold within Canada, and the thing is, they've been more successful in Canada than they have in the United States.
Talking about natural gas, price for natural gas are stable, are good, are reasonable, and you see renewables.
Natural gas in the United States is ridiculously low compared to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
So that's why the U.S. can export so much LNG, because compressing and liquefying natural gas in the United States, where it's so cheap compared to like even Russian or Qatar natural gas, it's dirt cheap in the United States. So you've got Australia. Australia, that's a basket case there, and energy as well. Australia is exporting all their energy and having that energy, not enough domestic energy remaining, because they've basically contracted out all of their LNG, almost all of their LNG, to other countries for the government, and leaving their people in the lurch. So the thing is, it's expensive to do natural gas just about any place in the world, except one, the United States. Two, Qatar is pretty good. Three, Russia is actually pretty good. And they've been branching out into the Arctic, which is severely expensive, but they don't have much competition there. So one advantage the United States has over all other countries in the world as far as natural gas is the massive natural gas and oil piping systems which are there. I believe the United States has more natural gas piping systems than any other country in the world. If you've ever pull up, you can find it on Google or in the internet. Just look at the massive amounts of piping for both oil and gas in the United States, which centers mostly around Texas. It's insane. Compare that to what's going on in Europe. Europe has a few pipelines, a few. Really, it's nothing at all like the United States. So that's why you also don't find fracking in the EU. or the UK, because they don't have the existing natural gas piping infrastructure that the United States has. So the US kind of has a huge leg up for fracking as far as the rest of the world. China's tried to do it a little bit here and there, but they can't do it widespread because they would have to build new natural gas pipeline infrastructure. And it's like, it's just not going to happen. So for right now, natural gas exports, the United States, rightly or wrongly, is going to remain a leg up over the rest of the world in exporting natural gas to other countries. Again, my opinion, I could be wrong.
Yeah, sure. Talking about the war, Israel and Iran, you see natural gas or oil is more sensitive in terms of price?
Say that again. I didn't quite get that.
I mean the following, considering the war, Israel, Iran, the price are more sensitive, are more, can go up and down with more intensity for natural gas or for oil?
I actually don't know. I don't pay attention to what Israel or Iran thinks about oil prices. I just wish they would stop bombing each other. So I could care less if Israel has high oil prices, if they want to go around, or if Iran has high oil prices domestically, which they don't have. Just my understanding is Iran has dirt cheap oil and gas just because they got so much of it. But I don't pay attention to it because it's really not my concern. If they're going to go around and they want to bomb each other, my view is I'm staying out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Let me show someone is talking to us. Slim Mansley, Manners Ben Ottman. I cannot translate this one. These things I don't know. Maybe Slim can explain a little bit more this question, this comment.
Okay.
Tom, let me understand you. So there is no spike prices, no spike in price
Right.
of oil. For gas is the same. So
Yeah.
we are in a stable situation without
For
or
now.
with wars. For now,
Yes.
Why?
Because when is the last time you can think there has not been any conflict in the Middle East during your lifetime?
Yeah, several of them.
So more bombs are being dropped in different countries, and it's just business as usual. So again, in the international oil and gas community, the traders, I can't speak on behalf of the traders, but it's like they factor this in. They see this. It's like, okay, more countries in the Middle East are bombing each other. The big question is the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which will cause all sorts of havoc globally? It's not. Was Karg Island, which is the main export terminal for Iran, did Israel bomb it? No. Were main oil and gas and energy infrastructure and facilities bombed by either Iran or Israel? No. So
No,
all you got is you're just adding this
no reason. No
background
reason to
noise
spike.
of war. If you're looking strictly at oil and gas prices, it's just background noise. It's irrelevant to where the oil prices should be. This will all change in an instant if Karg Island gets blown up, or if Strait of Hormuz actually gets closed. But that's going to hurt the rest of the world far more than the U.S. because, as I said, somewhere between 2% to 5% of the U.S. oil that the U.S. imports, and America still imports a lot of oil. Only 2 to 5% go through Strait of Hormuz. So it's not going to really affect the US except, the side effect of oil prices globally going up. It's going to hurt a lot of other countries far more than the US. So it makes no sense for Iran to actually close the Strait of Hormuz. It's just a threat that they've been using for decades.
So we could conclude that we are very stable for oil prices, and the
For now.
trend is the prices come down, go
Yeah, probably.
low.
I'm not an oil trader, and please don't base market decisions on the stuff that I'm just shooting
Do
off
not
the top of my
do
head.
not
But
buy based on my opinions. Yeah, that's right. Great conversation. Thank you, Tom. And I hope that you can come more times with what topics or themes you would like to talk and to explain to us.
Um, I, I I used to write so much about international oil and gas, and I just sort of gave it up for mostly. And now I'm more onto climate, which I poke fun of the climate panic crowd. It's just I just have so much fun poking fun at them. I poke fun at the censorship crowd. I have fun doing that. And I don't know. I type pretty much every day on LinkedIn, and usually I just have no idea what I'm going to write. I just sit down, have a cup of coffee early in the morning, and just start typing. I've been doing this for years, so it's like whatever comes out, whatever interests me. So I don't have a set agenda anymore or any
Okay.
set topic that I do, but those are basically it. So when I write about international oil and gas and energy, usually those are serious.
The
When
last,
I write about climate, it's not. I just poke
yeah,
fun. It's
yeah,
like you guys
that's a
are
good,
panicking.
yeah, that's a good point. The last point for you. Renewables are taking the place of natural gas in United
No,
States, or
I,
no?
I, you cannot, you cannot replace reliable electricity generation with unreliable electricity generation and expect your electric grid to function properly. So you cannot replace reliable energy from oil, gas, coal, and nuclear with intermittent, unreliable energy, electricity from wind and solar and even hydro. Hydro, you can't even expand. Hydro is not intermittent usually, although I've pointed out
No,
hydro is intermittent, but it takes a course over the course of decades, not
decades.
days or weeks. So
Seasonal,
it
yeah.
goes down, up and down. So it's a lost cause. So if the US federal government removes the subsidies for wind and solar, watch how fast both of those industries just collapse. And China's going to be screwed if that happens, because they're the ones that have been happily selling all of this wind and solar infrastructure parts type stuff to the Western world, which has been gullible enough to go along with the whole climate panic stuff. So my phrase, which I've been using for a long time to the people who are so concerned about the climate crisis, is panic harder, damn it. It's just, I find it so funny. It's like, you guys really think the world is going to end? It's like, okay, I'm just going to laugh at you. I'm sorry if that
Anyway,
sounds harsh, but I just don't know what else to do.
very
It's like
good.
dealing
Thank you
with the
so.
cult. I just laugh at them.
Yeah, thank you so much. Was a great pleasure to meet you.
Nice
By
talking with
this
you again. Take care.
six or seven, I'm not sure that how many of these podcasts we did in the past, but
I
around five
think
or
we're
six.
number 6. I don't know. It's been a few. I've been on and off a few years.
Okay. Have a good day. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Bye bye.